Hi, and welcome to Miss McKean's Tips on Tricks on what to keep and what not to keep. When it's the end of the school year, you've amassed piles and piles of papers. Now, what do you do with it? Should you keep everything? Should you get rid of everything? I think it's definitely a combination because so much of what you do in one school year can be helpful in the next school year, and so on. In order to help you figure out what's worth keeping, I'm going to break it down into graded work, notes, classwork, and then I'll go over some tips and tricks in general. So starting off with graded work, you're not going to want to keep all of your graded work, but word to the wise, definitely keep everything until grades are finalized. Until you get that report card in your hand or visually online, you do not want to get rid of graded work in case there are any grade discrepancies. You want to have the hard evidence of what your grades were on certain assignments. So once those progress report cards have come out, let's look at what type of graded work should be kept and what shouldn't be kept. If you don't have any work shown on the work, for example, an agenda check, you don't really have any work shown here. On a bubble sheet, definitely no work, just multiple choice with you writing the letters. Those don't really mean anything, and therefore, in my opinion, not really worth keeping. But again, keep those in terms of your grades before you get your report card. Now, what about if there is work and there's feedback? For example, written work, or your teacher is giving suggestions. I'm going to say definitely keep this type of stuff. Now, you might not ever write the same paper again or do that same exact work again, but writing tends to be generally the same. And so what you want to do is be able to have that so you can remember previous mistakes that you've made. So now I'm going into my next school year. I'm looking at what I'm writing about something and how can I learn from my previous mistakes to improve my writing. There are also going to be times where you're going to have tests or quizzes that have information that's going to show up in your future classes. So often our classes are built upon each other. You go from Spanish 1 to Spanish 2 to Spanish 3. You go from world geography to world history, and there are lots of connections. So if you have a quiz that has all this information that might show up again in a future class, I'm definitely suggesting keeping these. This can come in handy to have this information ready to go. And a pro tip to take it even one step further, I would then take those questions off of those quizzes or assessments and turn it into a Quizlet. That way I have it in a really easily accessible place, and I don't have to go rifle through papers. Instead, what all I have to do is simply just go through that Quizlet. Now, what about if I had some graded work that was just based on completion? So for example, you see here, this work got a stamp. Mr. DeLuca likes this. Is it worth keeping something that wasn't really looked at and evaluated with feedback? I'm going to go with maybe. This is going to be up to you. You really need to decide, does this piece of work have valuable content or practice that I can use in the future? You want to think about what classes you're going to be taking in the following years. What do you plan on majoring in college? How is this going to come in handy to you? Is it going to come in handy? Will you have work like this in the coming years? So this one is an up to you kind of answer. Now let's move on to notes, which some classes have piles and piles and piles of notes, like if you're in my IB history class. And a lot of the times those are actually going to be worth keeping. So like I mentioned earlier, a lot of classes connect. We have the math series, math 1, 2, 3. We have IB classes that they are 2-year classes. And so the first year information is essential to the second year information, and you need it for that IB assessment. And the world languages connect, so on and so forth. So a lot of the times this can be very helpful that you don't have to go looking up information. You already have it all. So for example, these notes right here are a set of notes from world geography. And it's about the U.S. and Canada. Well, the U.S. is going to come up again, at least in the 11th grade. So these types of notes could potentially come in handy. It doesn't hurt to store them away. Paper doesn't take up that much space. And so I'm going to say yes, you should keep it if it's going to apply to a future class, because you never know when it's going to come in handy. We have classes that connect in high school, and then even beyond that, you might potentially be able to use some of your notes from high school in college. For example, I used my physics and statistics notes from high school to help me in college because it was much more broken down, and the teachers went a little bit more step by step for us. So I had that work already ready to go, and I had lots of examples to work with. I also used my AP English notes from high school to help me study for my credential test for my English teaching credential. And so it really does come in handy. And again, it didn't take up that much space for me to have. And super big pro tip, if you are very serious about a certain topic, say whether it be English or history or math or science, and you know you want to major in it in college, I would suggest taking your notes and then typing them up when you have time, like over the summer. Typing up your notes might seem tedious, but it's going to pay off in many, many different ways. First of all, as you're typing, you're reviewing the material, so you don't even realize that you're studying, but you are studying. Secondly, it turns out to be much, much neater for you and easier to review. I definitely know people who go back and look at their class notes and can't even read their own handwriting, but typed work much easier to read. Also, what I really suggest is if you compile all of your notes for a unit in one document, it's so easy to then search for certain terms. If you have a PC, you hit Control F and then type in what word you're looking for. If you have an Apple product, you hit Command F, and then you're able to really, really easily search. So pro tip right there. Now, when it comes to classwork, what should you keep? When it's easily found online, for example, this map from a world geography class, some statistics about population, I'm going to say maybe no, because you can find that information really easily online. The chances of having to find certain things like this or have access to this information isn't necessarily the most essential. So I would say this could definitely be some space savers right here. When it has key ideas though, so for example, general subject information. So what this purple sheet here is an MYP reference sheet that has important things that go all throughout our MYP classes at Laguna. And so this would be definitely very handy. This sheet was built in order for students to be able to apply this to multiple classes. Or maybe you have a bunch of key terms that are going to come up and show up again. Some of these terms that are in this world geography course show up again in US history and IB history that junior year. So I would, yes, definitely suggest keeping these types of key idea type papers. You could also turn them into Quizlets as a way to study, save space, and be able to quickly review. Now, what about if it's a warm-up? You know, those things that you have to do at the beginning of each class. Worth keeping? I'm going to go with maybe, because it really depends on what types of warm-ups you do in class. So for example, some teachers very purposefully put questions into the warm-ups that are going to come in handy for understanding the content, going to come in handy for assessments. So if it has important information in it that your teachers cued you into as being important, I would say keep it. However, some warm-ups are more for logistical purposes. Let's write down our homework, the agenda, the objectives, not really any important content information, but just the day-to-day. I would say not worth keeping. So I'm going to wrap it up with some other tips and tricks that I have. So if you want to save space and you don't need a worksheet, you could always take pictures and upload to an album on your phone, or you could upload to Google Drive. Specifically with our IB classes, with them being 2 years, you could say take a picture of this calendar, and then you can remember all the things that you studied, or you don't even have to remember it. You just have to look at the picture and you're going to see all the things that you studied, and that can help you review, remembering those bigger topics that you need to look over. I would also suggest keeping each class organized in a folder or a binder. That way they're easy to find. The whole purpose of this is you have this information ready for you and able to find. So just keeping it organized. And then last but not least, if there's nothing on the back of a paper, it's only one-sided, use it as scratch paper. It'll save lots of paper, and then you have all this paper ready to go to use. And then last but not least, don't throw away the paper into trash. Throw away the paper that you're going to get rid of into a recycling bin. So those are my tips and tricks on what to do with all those papers at the end of the school year. If you have any questions, please feel free to email lagoonamazing@gmail.com or contact on the Instagram. Thank you. Have a great summer.